Welcome to Deliberate Leaders Podcast. I am your host and executive business coach, Allison Dunn. Our topic today is cultivating excellence. Our guest is Alan Stein Jr. He is the author of Raise Your Game, High Performance Secrets for the Best of the Best. He is a performance coach with a passion for helping business leaders change behaviors. He spent 15 plus years working with the highest performing basketball players on the planet, including NBA superstar Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Kobe Bryant, which is very cool. He teaches proven principles on how to utilize the same approaches in business that elite athletes use to perform at a world-class level. Alan, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be with you.
I'm so happy to have you. I love to kick these off with a deliberate conversation. So what would be your number one leadership tip for our listeners today?
Number one leadership tip is that caring matters. And you need to show those that you lead how much you care about them as human beings first, and then as fill in the blank second, as athletes second, as sales professionals second, as employees second, whatever their title may be. But they need to know that you care about them and that you care about their goals and their dreams and their future. You care about their contribution. You care about utilizing their skill sets for the betterment of the team. So yes, caring matters a lot.
Yeah. Can I share? I should know who has actually said this, but one of my go-to quotes often in leadership training is, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that is so true in essence. So great tip. Thank you very much. All right. I'd like to dive into some of the principles that you have inside of your book. So what are the three most important, impactful traits for elite performance, whether on the court or off the court?
It's been my experience, having both a career in basketball and a career in the corporate space, that there's probably about a dozen traits that most high performers tend to share, or at least are within a few degrees of. But I found three of the most common ones are, first and foremost, they have a strong respect and appreciation for the basics. They don't try to skip steps. They know how important mastery of the fundamentals are to mastering their craft and to leading with, high influence and impact. Number two is they learned how to blend confidence with humility. They earn the right to be confident by putting in the work to deserve success, but they maintain a humbleness that allows them to stay open to feedback, stay open to coaching, and certainly enough humility that no matter how good they get, they know they can still get better. And then the third trait would be a strong respect and appreciation for the process. The highest performers and the best leaders I've ever been around have a very clear vision, and they have a North Star that they're pursuing, and they have goals that they're trying to accomplish. But once they've crystallized those, they don't focus on the actual goal. They actually focus on what's right in front of them. They focus on the process that will get them closer to that goal. And the best analogy I use is, if your goal is to build a brick wall, you don't need to worry about the wall. You need to focus on the bricks. You need to do everything in your power to lay each and every brick with care and precision exactly where it needs to go. And if you do that consistently, the wall will just take care of itself. So I'm happy to expand on any of those, but those are three traits immediately that I've noticed among all high performers and the most effective leaders I've ever been around.
I think that those are fantastic traits. I would love to dive into tips when you recognize that someone is focusing on the wall. And so how do you get them to focus on just the kind of the first steps that are in front of them, like, and to recognize when we're focusing on the wrong thing?
Yeah, well, I certainly have a strong, level of empathy and compassion for those that focus on the wall, because I do believe we live in a society that glorifies outcomes. I mean, we absolutely live in a society that is always talking, in sports about wins and losses, and business about profits and losses. And those things are important, and they usually are the driver of the eventual North Star. But what I try to get folks to do is untether from the actual outcome and focus on the daily behaviors, the mindsets, the habits, the rituals, the routines, the process that will greatly increase the chance that you'll actually reach the goal. So I do believe goals are important, but they're not what actually separates everyone. because most people have at least vaguely similar goals. What separates people is action, it's execution, it's implementation. It's the discipline to consistently lay those bricks. Because if you just take bricks and haphazardly kind of throw them at your leisure, you won't end up with a sound, sturdy wall. You'll end up with a pile of bricks. So to me, it is all about that execution, and it's all about the process. So trying to get folks to understand that focusing on the process will, over time, consistently yield the best result and give you the best chance of actually reaching that goal.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That I think you dove into that well. Let's talk about what is a winner mindset and how does one develop it?
I look at a winner's mindset as simply doing the best you can with what you have wherever you are.
Okay.
Full stop. Like just putting your focus on the things that you have control over and learning to let go of the things that you don't. So do the best you can with what you have wherever you are, because circumstances and events will constantly change. Just like the climate will constantly change. But what we need to do is focus on the parts that we can make as consistent as possible. And that's how we choose to respond to different circumstances and events. So I want folks to put much more into the thoughtfulness of their response than to the event itself. And one of the reasons that I love this do the best you can with what you have wherever you are as not only a mindset, but as an overall operating system for us as human beings, is it automatically eliminates a trilogy of behaviors that I know from firsthand experience undermine performance, undermine productivity, undermine influence and impact, undermine optimism, undermine fulfillment. And those traits are blaming, complaining, and making excuses. And I intentionally use, absolutes very sparingly, but I can promise you, you will never, ever make your situation better or move yourself forward by blaming, complaining, and making excuses. So as high performers and as leaders, the sooner we can let go of the temptation to blame, complain, and make excuses, then the sooner we'll reach another level of performance. And, when you do untether from that trilogy of behaviors, it's like taking an emotional weight vest off. You immediately become emotionally more agile. And if you're not emotionally agile, then you're emotionally fragile. And there's no way that you can perform or lead to the level you're capable of if you're emotionally fragile.
I'm sure that even working with top elite stars, that they would get into a blame, complain, and make excuses because we're humans, right? Like sometimes that's just where we are. What techniques do you suggest using if you find that people are using it in their language, in their thought process, in their actual communication style to destroy their winning mindset? Like what are the things that you suggest they do to pull it out?
Well, first and foremost, and I'm so glad you went in that direction and you brought that point up. It's important for folks to know that sports, business, life, everything in between is not a perfection game. I want folks to feel more inspired by progress than they do by perfection. And I'll certainly throw this disclaimer out. I mean, everything I'm sharing with you now, everything I share on stage, everything I share on page, I'm not coming from a place of mastery. I'm not batting 1,000 and I'm not getting straight A's. I absolutely fall victim to blaming, complaining, and making excuses. But here's what I can say with a tremendous amount of pride. I do that less today than I did a year ago, and way less than I did 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So I'm not immune to those same temptations, but I now have a level of awareness that I do it a lot less frequently. And to me, that's the most important part. And then when occasionally I do revert back to that old operating system and I feel the need to blame or complain or make an excuse, I catch myself doing it really quickly now, usually within a matter of minutes. And I remind myself, this is not going to help me move forward, that I need to have an attitude of extreme ownership. Shout out to Jocko Willink for the title of his book, but I need to hold myself fully accountable. And again, it goes back to this paradigm. I accept and surrender to the fact that I am not responsible for circumstances, events, what people say, what people do, but I'm 100% responsible for my response to those things. And I don't want my default response to be blaming, complaining, and making excuses, because then I'm skirting accountability and personal responsibility. And that's not the type of man that I'm trying to become.
Yeah. What you're saying super resonates with me. I also I'm better than I was 5 years ago, and I continue to improve on it every day. And it is incredible to me how often, even with the concept of I want to own everything that I choose to say and do, right? And how I react to things, how often we just come up sometimes with excuses, and excuses or reasons are still, like, you know what I mean, deflecting. So
well, here, let me since we're going to pull on this thread, and I love it.
yeah.
So you were incredibly gracious for allowing me to be 2 minutes late to our Zoom call. When I logged into Zoom, Zoom started to do a series of updates, of course, at 3:59 Eastern time, right before I was supposed to jump on. And it's funny because for 3 seconds, I was going to say that to you. I was going to say, I'm sorry that I'm late, but Zoom started to do the updates. But then I realized I would just be making an excuse. If I would have logged in 10 minutes early, then even if it did do the updates, I still would have been early. So the tardiness was not a result of Zoom doing updates. The tardiness is 100% on me for logging in so late. And, you know, you were incredibly kind and gracious for my tardiness, but for a split second, I almost considered using that as an excuse to hide behind, but I chose not to, because that's not the type of person that I want to be. And let me just say this too, to completely clarify this. It's okay to have preferences in life. I have a long list of preferences. I have a long list of the way I'd like to see the world unfold. But I realize that I don't always get my preferences. There's a good number of things that happen every single day of my life that aren't what I would prefer. So to me, the sign of a real leader and a high performer and someone of very high character, it's how you behave when you don't get what you want. You know, it's how you behave when your preferences aren't met or things that happen that you don't like. And I'm just working really hard that when those things happen, having a level of acceptance, but not letting that outer world dictate my inner world. And please know that 5-10 years ago, I was the absolute king of making excuses and blaming and complaining. You know, if anything didn't go my way or I didn't reach a goal, I was a master at putting somebody else at fault. And it wasn't until I finally had this new mindset, which I now find very empowering and liberating, that I've been able to say, you know what? No, it always starts and stops with my response. And to me, that's been completely freeing. I mean, I don't necessarily get my preferences met any more frequently today than I did 10 years ago. I just own my response to that, as opposed to deflecting and blaming and complaining like I used to do.
Yeah. Love that. So that is, I just want to tie it back. Did that go, is that under the, I'm sorry, I apologize. The impactful traits, was that the third? Was that a third one, or is that just under the, like, do the best you can with where you're at?
That's basically the winner's mindset. So our winner's mindset is do the best you can, what you have, where you are. And this concept of holding ourselves fully accountable, not blaming, complaining, and making excuses, all falls under that paradigm of a winner's mindset.
Okay, awesome. You have had the opportunity to work with some incredible talent on the basketball court. And obviously, you know, the desire to have peak performance is a big part of that. So what role does refocusing have in peak performance?
We talk a lot about focus, or at least society talks a lot about focus. And what I find interesting, it's a little more nuanced than that, because I don't know that in today's day and age, it's a realistic expectation for any of us to have long periods of uninterrupted, sustained focus. We just have too many things vying for our attention. And a good portion of those things are due to technology. You know, it's those little devices that most people choose to be tethered to 24/7. Yeah. So I think instead of worrying so much about focus, what we should do is concentrate on the ability to refocus the lens and have some cues and some triggers that allow us to recalibrate and refocus that lens throughout the day. You know, and it always starts with awareness. You know, first and foremost, the first step to improving any area of our life is awareness. And that's because you'll never improve something you're unaware of, and you'll never fix something that you're oblivious to. So if you want to improve the skill set of being focused, the first thing you need to do is have an awareness of when you're unfocused, of when you're distracted, of when your mind wanders, of when you're not fully present. Because then and only then, a consciousness of that, can you dial it back in and refocus the lens on what's right in front of you. And as another operating system that I like to use as part of a winning mindset is the acronym WIN, WIN, and that stands for what's important now. I first heard this a decade ago from Lou Holtz, the former football coach at Notre Dame, and that acronym is WIN, what's important now. At any given moment of any given day, you should be able to take a deep breath, take a beat, take a pause, and ask yourself, am I choosing to place my attention in what I believe is most deserving of it in this moment? And I'm going to say that again because it's really powerful and it's really important. Any given moment of any given day, you should be able to take a quick beat and ask yourself, am I intentionally choosing to place my attention in what I believe is most deserving of it in this moment? So in other words, if you're sitting with your family at dinner and you believe giving them your full attention is what's most important, do you catch yourself looking at your phone and scrolling through social media or returning an email? Because in that moment, you're not giving your attention to what you say is what's most important to you, which is your family. So to me, that's a recalibration exercise I do dozens of times over the course of any given day, is making sure I'm placing my attention exactly where I think it needs to be.
Okay. WIN, I love that acronym. I have not heard that one, and so that's a winner. Ha.
I love it. Perfect.
Alan, what unique perspective do you encourage leaders to adopt?
I heard the foundational mantra of transformational leadership several years ago, and it really opened my eyes up to an overall approach that I believe is most effective for leadership in general. And that is the concept of, it's not about me, it's about you. This really actually ties a nice red thread to how we opened up the conversation talking about caring. You know, it's important for leaders to understand that it's not about them, it's about those that they serve. It's about those on their team. It's about the culture. And when you can shift your focus away from what you want from people and shift it to what you want for people, then you become the most magnetic leader in any room. And, you know, this doesn't mean that you think less of yourself. It just means you think of yourself less often. And that those on your team, you care about their goals and their dreams. You care about them feeling safe and valued and respected and appreciated. You know, you show them, as we said earlier, that you care about them as a human being first. So for leaders, if you want to increase your influence and impact, start caring more about those that you serve than your own personal agenda and your own personal preferences.
When you see leaders are doing that, how do you, like, what's the trigger that you can pull them out of? Like, what are we focused on right now?
I just remind them, and here's an example. Let's just say you're the president and CEO of a 100-person company. I remind them that you don't have 99 people that work for you. You work for 99 people. It is your job to set the vision and set the mission and put people in the right position so they can succeed and to create a safe and inclusive culture. Like, that is your job. You are working for those people so that they in turn can best serve your customers or your clients or your members or however your business is structured. But it's important to realize, if you wake up every day and you lead from your ivory tower and you think that everybody is there to serve you, I just don't think that's how you get the requisite buy-in and believe in to develop a championship caliber culture and a winning team. So the best leaders that I've ever been around in sport and in business have a servant's heart and are there to serve others to the best of their ability.
Love that. Let's talk about the concept of next play. Why is it so powerful?
This is one of my favorite recalibration tools as well. The concept of next play, I first heard from legendary Coach K, the all-time winningest coach in the history of college basketball, former coach at Duke. And he has this concept of next play, that you don't worry about the play that just happened because there's nothing you can do about it now. It's over. It's in the rearview mirror. It's in the past. It's unchangeable. But you quickly refocus your lens on the next play that's right in front of you. So, you know, using basketball as an example, you know, if you just missed a shot, oh, well, next play. You just turn the ball over. Okay, next play. If the referee doesn't make the call that you'd hoped, next play. Because any mental, physical, or emotional energy you waste on something that is in the past and is unchangeable means you don't have that energy to invest in the present moment where you can still make a difference. And that's really the whole concept of next play, is being able to invest your energy where you can still make a difference. And, if let's just say, for the sake of arguments, that you had multiple podcast interviews today and you had 3 podcast interviews scheduled, and the very first one kind of went a little sideways. It didn't quite go the way that you had hoped. Maybe you were having some tech difficulties. Maybe the guest wasn't as cooperative as you had hoped, but for whatever reason, that podcast did not hit the target that you had hoped. Well, are you able to quickly move to the next play and refocus the lens on the second and third interview? Or are you going to drag some of that negative energy with you and now detract from your ability to have a good second and third interview? So, when you put your head on your pillow tonight, can you say, yes, the first one went a little bit off the rails, but I quickly regrouped, moved to the next play, and the second and third interviews were 2 of the best I've ever done? Or do you put your head on your pillow saying, man, today was an absolute waste, a colossal, misfire. All of my interviews went really poorly today because you chose to keep focusing on the first one that maybe didn't go to your preference.
Yeah. Powerful concept, for sure. In this book, Raise Your Game, what is your favorite nugget or takeaway that is the reason people should run out and buy it?
Well, as an overarching view of the book, I wrote the book from a few different vantage points, because I wrote it from the vantage point of what would help players, quote unquote, players or teammates, team members, employees, what would help a coach, or a boss, a parent, any leader, and then what would help the actual team, getting everybody on the same page and playing nicely together. And I did that for a very specific reason. Regardless of your vocational role at present, we all tend to weave in and out of those different areas throughout our lives. I mean, you might be an employee or a teammate at work, but then you come home and you're a spouse and a parent where you're responsible for your children. So, you need to be able to do both. And, even if you're someone that doesn't consider themselves part of a traditional team, even if you're a solopreneur, myself, I'm a professional keynote speaker, but you better believe I have people that help me do what I do on stage. I mean, I have a manager and an agent. I have an admin assistant. I have someone that helps me with my social media content. I have people that are very much behind the scenes working really hard that allow me to do what I do. And for that, I'm incredibly thankful. So I don't believe that anybody is in complete isolation and does anything, in a silo on their own. We're all a part of something bigger than ourselves. Even if you're just a member of your local church community or the PTA or anything else, we all jockey in and out of being players, being coaches, and being on teams. And, the other part that I hope makes the book helpful and is a useful resource is there's action steps at the end of each chapter. Because as a former coach, I'm a big believer that it's not the knowledge that helps us improve our lives. It's the application of that knowledge. So reading Raise Your Game cover to cover, but not changing any of your behaviors or mindsets is the same as not reading it at all, because nothing in your life will change. So I put those at the end of each chapter as hopefully a helpful and useful prompt to get people to start changing some of their behaviors. And most of the important ones we've had the pleasure of talking about during this conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. Alan, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me here on Deliberate Leaders today. Listeners, I'm going to include all of Alan's contact information in the show notes. So look there, follow him, and connect with him there.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Thank you.